what's going on, everybody? Dan the Ultra Dad here. Thanks again for stopping by to my channel. Before I get started tonight on the topic of the day, I wanted to ask you to subscribe to my channel if you like this content. Definitely helps me out a lot, and I appreciate it. Hit the like thumbs up as well if you like this video in particular. And you can always hit the bell notification if you'd like to be notified of future videos like this. Right, so would love to have you on board. Anyway, all right, that out of the way, let's get into the video. All right, so tonight we're gonna be talking about an interesting topic that is not a new topic to anyone. It's something that I think most ultra marathon runners think about, but not just ultras. This applies to regular marathons, longer distance events. And the topic is, and the question is, how many A races or how many of your big races should you run every year? Or just flat out, how many races should you train for and try to execute in one calendar year? So here's my calendar. Let's see, this is August. There wasn't a whole lot going on in August for me, unfortunately, because I had COVID. This is my calendar, and this year, for the first time, I actually got a physical calendar. Shout out to Seth James Demore, who does that, and yeah, I kind of like that. But let's get into the actual topic for tonight, and that is how many races should you train for in one year? So I think there's a couple things that go into this. The first thing is going to be your experience level with running whatever race you're doing. So if you're doing 100 milers, if you're doing ultra marathons, if you're doing regular marathons, if you've never done them before, you probably want to ease in a little bit and just get your toes wet. You don't really want to just fill the calendar up with races if it's your first time. Now, if you have just kind of an average experience level, which is where I am, with depending on which race, but for me that would be ultra marathons. I've run a couple 100 milers. I've run probably going on, I don't know, maybe a dozen 50Ks, maybe not quite that many, and a handful of 50 milers and 100Ks. So if you're at that average level, then I think it can be something that we can kind of broadcast more generally. Obviously, if you're at the elite level, your number of races is going to be a lot different. As the average Joe like me, weekend warrior, another, I guess, factor going into this decision is going to be your physical health. So if you have special needs, if you have problems that you're working through, health problems, something like that, then that's definitely going to affect, of course, how many races you plan for any given year. Another factor that I think you have to take into consideration, of course, is the length of the race or the intensity of the race. So, we're talking about marathons, ultra marathons. If you run a shorter distance, like a 5K person, track person, 10K person, then obviously, I think it goes without saying, you probably will run more races in a given year than someone who runs the longer distances. So that certainly should be taken into account. All right, so all these factors, you put them in the bowl and you mix it up and you try to figure out the right recipe for your perfect ultramarathon season. And then you also have some side thoughts. So one would be your long-term goals for your body, I guess. So it's kind of weird and maybe even a little bit morbid, but if you do 4 100 milers a year, your body's just not going to last a whole lot. It's not going to last very long, I don't think. Now, there are some special people. Okay, so again, none of this applies to everybody, but doing 300 or 400 milers year after year after year just has to take a toll on your body. Not only I think actually mentally you probably are. It's fine. You probably can handle it, but your body itself, mechanically, your bones, your joints, your ligaments, I'm just not sure the body is made to do that, to endure through that kind of punishment year after year. So I think part of it is, long term, how much are you willing to risk, I guess, is the question. Because I can guarantee you, if you try to do 400 milers in a year and do that, year after year, you're going to see some serious injuries, I think. I don't think anyone would argue that. So the final factor would be, how successful do you want to be in your races? So part of the mindset is, if you do too many races, then the quality of each race is going to be less than it should be or less than it could be. So one of the thoughts is, maybe you pick fewer races than you could handle so that you can do better and perform better in each of those races. And I think that there's a lot of truth to that. So I think if you And you know, if you think you can handle three, like I think I could have probably survived 3 100 milers last year, but I can guarantee you that I wouldn't have done so well in the fall at the Grindstone 100. I just don't think I would have been as effective if I would have run 2 full 100 milers in May, the Cruel Jewel 100, and in June the Mohican 100. So how well do you want to do, and how well do you want to perform in the races that you do train for? So that's why I think it makes more sense to back off a little bit. And I've heard that, you know, other people have said that too in the past about, you know, that's a pretty good strategy to have, because then you can train really, really well for that particular race. Here are my thoughts about how many races you should run. You know, you're definitely going to be tempted to fill the calendar up more than you probably should. You know, I think last year, although on paper it looks like not that many, I had 3 100 milers on the calendar. That was a lot. You know, especially for someone like me who's just kind of an average runner, you know, that was a lot. So in fact, if I would have finished the Cruel Jewel 100, I think it would have severely impaired my ability to finish the Mohican 100, which was only a month after that. So I really was asking a lot from my body to be able to do, you know, 100 milers a month apart or a month and a half apart. And then in the fall, I was going to do the Grindstone 100. So that was like 2 to 3 months after the first two. So that's a lot. You know, that's basically 300 milers in 6 months. And I think that's probably too much for the body to handle. Now, this year, I still haven't really announced what races I'll be actually racing yet, but I'm probably going to go down a little bit. I'm probably going to be looking at 100Ks more than 100 milers. I don't know if you can hear that. My dog is going crazy. Anyway. All right, so never a dull moment in the Ultra Dad house, for sure. So where was I? So yes, I think 3 100 milers was definitely a bit much for 1 year. Now, this upcoming year, again, I'm going to be looking at some shorter distances. So I definitely still hope and plan to do 1 100-mile race next year. But I'm hoping to throw in a couple 100Ks as well. So anyway, more on that in a different video. But I think, you know, obviously it depends on what distance you're doing. I think 2 100 milers for me is kind of the sweet spot. I don't know that I'll be trying to do 3 100 milers anytime soon in the future. So 100 milers just take a special toll on the body for sure. Because usually, you know, you go from 100K, which my last 100K I finished in 15 hours. And then 100 miler, you know, it's almost double that time. So closer to 30 hours or more, depending on which 100 miler you choose, which poison you pick. So anyway, so I think for me, the sweet spot's probably 2 100 milers. I definitely could see myself doing 300Ks in a year's time. You know, I think most years I'm going to be doing, you know, 3 or 4, probably at least 3 50Ks as a part of my training plan. So as far as 100 milers, I wouldn't do any more than 2. Next year, like I said, I might do a 100 miler and 2 100Ks, and then, you know, fill in the rest of the calendar with some 50Ks. So that's kind of my thought as far as, you know, my personal preference on the number of races. You know, but then again, you know, you have these crazy, I shouldn't say crazy, but you have these extreme athletes, these elites, and just some average people that are cool with, you know, pushing themselves that far. Who will do multiple, you know, like the Triple Crown of 200 milers. That is just a crazy feat, I think, to do 3 200-mile events, really 2 200s and 1 240-mile event within, I think it's within like 2 or 3 months. So to me, I just don't know how the body can really take that. And, you know, another one would be the Midwest Super Slam, doing, I think it's 5 100 milers, or is it 6? I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong, but 5, I think, 100 milers within 1 season, which I think is about, you know, 4 months. That's just, wow, 5, that's just crazy to me to think of doing that. So, you know, I don't know. What are your thoughts? Mention down in the comments below. I'd be curious. I know a bunch of you probably have thoughts on this topic, so make sure you mention them down there. I'd like to hear what you think about, you know, how many races should an ultramarathoner plan every year. I'm getting close to deciding my lineup for next year, my schedule, and the races I want to get into and race. I haven't quite gotten there yet, but I'm getting close. And so I was thinking about this topic, and I thought that it was pretty relevant. Once again, thanks again for following my channel. If you have any questions, comments, critiques, whatever, mention it below. I really appreciate it, and we will catch you in the next one.